feels really funny saying this as like a Guardian journalist. That I'm aware.
Isn't this what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm just aware of the stereotypes. Half Muslim, half white, young millennial, gone off here to go to Jordan Peterson, Peterson video, and I'm like, it's not what you think.
Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not?
Is modern masculinity in crisis? As a journalist, I've covered many different stories, from terrorism to football to knife crime. And in doing so, I often find myself in male-dominated spaces. I've seen that there are many issues affecting men today that we're not properly focusing on, and I want to do more to address these.
You get a lot of men who have no idea who they are, none whatsoever.
As soon as you mention men and masculinity online, the discussion becomes extremely partisan and really polarised. Post-Me Too, it's even harder to talk about these things, but more necessary than ever. I'm not saying we're going to get all of the answers to the big questions in this series, but I just want to open up the debate to some new voices. We did a call out to our readers asking them what they thought we should cover, and their answers were very telling. Think that normal emotions such as anger and frustration aren't considered normal by many people. Do we all have the right to express solidarity with our gender? Me Too has blurred the lines between genuine romantic approach versus harassment. Where is the line? Where are the real options for mental health support? Do not begin the conversation with a finger-wagging lecture. That doesn't sound very Guardian. This will immediately alienate a huge chunk of the intended audience, and you're immediately back to square one. I do think that's a fair point. I am laughing just because he told me not to start with a finger-wagging lecture, and it sounded like a finger-wagging lecture. So. I'm starting this series at the sharp end of the debate, looking at the people who are following one of the most popular thinkers and polemicists of our time, Jordan Peterson.
In what sense is our society male-dominated?
Now, Peterson is an interesting character in his own right. He's written a book, 12 Rules for Life, which has been a bestseller around the world, and his videos often go viral online, especially when he's being interviewed by female journalists. But that's not what I want to focus on today. I want to look at why Jordan Peterson is so popular and what it is about his message that has resonated with so many people.
The West has lost faith in the idea of masculinity. Now, that's no different than the death of God. It's the same thing.
Peterson's outspoken views on things like gender pronouns and the role of men and women in society have sparked huge debate, but there's more to his message. He does a lot of work around philosophy and religion and the idea of responsibility and purpose for people. This is interesting because, in a way, it's a form of self-help or life guidance, and his audience is predominantly made up of men. I can't imagine I'm the only woman kind of wondering what's going on, mate.
I've come today because he's very, very provocative, and I know there's lots of things I won't agree.
He has a question, and I like the way he thinks about the question.
I don't agree with most of his views, but I like the fact that he's forthright with his opinion and he's got an opinion.
His message is just different. He just talks about meaning and responsibility, which no one else is talking about.
I think women should have opportunities, and I don't believe he thinks any different.
What would you say your political leanings?
I'm very happy to vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
I'm broadly a socialist.
Culturally, I've been brought up as a lefty Marxist.
I'm not expecting to learn new stuff tonight. I'm expecting a sense to say, well, thank you. I appreciate what you put out there. I'm here to say, yes, big man Jordan, yes, well done.
Okay.
So in the auditorium now with Bruno and Noah. It's pretty full, and I'm kind of surprised at just how many women there are. So I'm looking to see if any of them will ask any questions. Unfortunately, we can't film in here whilst he's speaking, and it's about to begin.
12 Rules for Life tour.
Peterson only touched on masculinity but spoke at length about gender and hierarchies. In many ways, the most interesting moment was the cheer he got when he pointed out how he was unwilling to bow to political correctness. This is a really big deal for his audience.
I think a lot of people have really got in society now, we're almost too PC in the way that we think about things.
He's absolutely challenging what is means particularly Guardian readers, I should think, and a lot of what they think and say.
He expresses his ideas without any worry about whether he's PC or not, and that's refreshing.
So political correctness is a really important point for our readers as well. In the call out that we did, many of them expressed their concern and not being able to say what they really think around issues like Me Too, because they feel like they're not going to be listened to.
There is a bit of a witch hunt happening.
As a woman and as a millennial and a minority who's written about identity issues, I think there would be a preconception that I firmly sit in the camp of political correctness, but that's not strictly true. I feel like we need to have uncomfortable conversations if things are going to move forwards. And the most important thing for me in a conversation is truth. So truth always trumps political correctness with me, but you have to couple that with respect and listening to people. And these are all things which go completely out of the window when we're having conversations on Twitter, for example. Now, there are other caveats. For example, you can't incite racial hatred or violence, but Jordan Peterson doesn't do that in what he says. He is provocative, but he creates a space where there's dialogue, debate, discussion, and that's really why he's popular with his audience.
Do you think we have a crisis of masculinity?
Yeah, I think there is. I think that there has been a feminisation of masculinity for a long time now, at least sort of since the 70s and 80s.
What do you mean by feminisation of masculinity?
I think what are seen as traditionally masculine traits, so the show of strength, has been discouraged. So I think there's been an outpouring of to embrace everything so much that the essential traits of masculinity just become forgotten about. I think also the crisis of masculinity isn't just down to the feminist movement, which I think Peterson would say is largely. It's also down to the abundance of lad culture, which has popped up. To the abandonment of responsibility to that essence, where masculinity is defined mainly by how much you can drink, how many drugs you can take, how many women you slept with, and that's come about because of lad culture. So I think there's a crisis just from that perspective as well, about how men define themselves.
So this was a really interesting place for me personally to start the debate, because I've had some of my own preconceptions challenged and really interesting conversations with people. One person in particular stood out, Neil, not just because of his face tattoos, but because of what he was saying about Jordan Peterson's message. Now, Neil owns a bunch of barbershops in the north of England, and I decided to continue the discussion with him in one of his barbershops in Leeds. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can catch up with the next episode, and let us know what you think we should be covering.
There's always a stigma about men can't be vulnerable and men can't have emotions or men can't cry.
Throughout the series, we're going to hear from lots of different voices, including some famous faces.
Men tend to make up their minds pretty quickly and then act on it. Women are much more subtle.
When I see my friends, especially when they're approaching women and they turn on this certain amount of bravado, it's like, that isn't you.
When we're talking about role models for kids, we have to be careful that in 40 years' time you're not telling them, no, that's wrong now, or 30 years' time. We're giving them role models now, what we think is a good role model, and then saying, no, we don't believe that anymore, we don't do that.
I feel like masculinity is misinterpreted these days, and people like just go for stereotypes as in like strength and protection. Being a man and being masculine is like being able to be like caring and have self-awareness of the people around you and the world around you as well.
There comes a point, and I think we've gone way past this point now, where your feelings and your emotions become counterproductive to you making progress.